So the community band resuming update. So as you can see, I did a survey on a scale of 1 to 5. How comfortable are they with us reopening and starting rehearsals in August, with 5 being very comfortable? 69% were a 5, 27% a 4, and 4% a 3. We don't have anybody saying that they're not ready for us to start, especially in August. Scale of 1 to 5 being indoors, very similar. There was one more person that voted for a 3. Everybody else was a 4 or a 5. As far as safety protocols, you can see was making sure that people are vaccinated, and if they're not, that they have done a negative test before they walk in. That is not something we can legally enforce, but we can highly recommend that be what people are doing. And then from there, it's the honor code more than anything else, just to make sure, because they're not technically our employees. So although we might want to follow guidelines as closely as we can, we also have certain things that if they say something to us and they're lying, there's nothing we can really do about it. I think hand sanitizers are an inexpensive and simple thing to do, that if by August that's still the case, I don't see why we can't just have a hand sanitizer by whatever doors are entrances and exits. That I think is fine to do. Outside of that, I think we should just tell people that we're going to social distance to the greatest distance we can based on the space available to us. The second survey was about, are you vaccinated? I gave everybody 3 choices. Are you vaccinated? Yes, no, I wish not to respond. And then I put on there, following Cal OSHA guidelines, if someone says they don't want to respond, we have to treat them as non-vaccinated for safety purposes. Everybody who has responded so far, which is into the 30s, as far as how many people have responded. So it's a very high response of people already. All of them have said, yes, they're vaccinated. I think we should just say that by the second half of August, if we have a location that we can be in and we're comfortable and everything logistically works out well, we should go ahead and begin rehearsals, and we should do it with hand sanitizers at every entrance, social distancing to the greatest possibility that there is. And beyond that, simply encouraging people who are non-vaccinated to wear a mask, and just leave it at that, because that's legally all we really can do now. But it shows that we are attempting to still give some sense of safety with everybody by putting those things into place. So I will formally propose beginning rehearsals towards the second half of August, assuming we have a location, with hand sanitizing, social distancing to the greatest distance possible, and encouraging masks for non-vaccinated people being the protocols that we put into place. I'm going to propose that. Is there a second? Todd, second. So any discussion about all of this?
It would be nice to, we probably need to talk to the school district to make sure we can get in.
Allison is on top of that, and she said a decision has not been made, but they are moving forward with preparations for possibly being able to let things happen, but it's not confirmed. Even Scott from the auditorium has already asked me for dates for the fall and for December and for the spring, saying I can't confirm you can use them, but I want the dates now because I'm being told that I may be open by the time the school year starts. If you're in favor of that, raise your hand and say aye. All right, nobody's opposed. I mean, at the time that I was trying to think of different venues, I didn't know. I had not been notified by Scott at the auditorium that he is starting to book dates, even though he's not confirmed he's going to open, because it's starting to look like he will be open. So if the auditorium's open by the time we want to do a concert, then I think everything for us is just back to normal business as far as where we're performing. We might have to do we might have to do some safety things, but as far as where we are, nothing would change. But then what I wanted to throw out there, our current budget, because we were thinking about how long it's going to take for everything to open up. When we approved the budget, we approved a December concert, spring, and then June or early July for like a patriotic concert for this upcoming season. But now that it looks like we're going to be starting to rehearse at the end of August, I think it would benefit us to insert a concert in October like we normally would do. So I wanted to propose, this means adding a little bit more to the budget, because we have, if it's like our typical concerts, there's $250 for the lighting engineer, sometimes $500 for a backdrop if we need to have one. There's the cost of the conductor for the actual concert. There won't be any additional rehearsal costs because we're already paying for that. If we're rehearsing at the beginning of August, it would just be the concert cost. So if we want to advertise it, there is probably $1,000 to $1,500 of potential expenses if we have to spend money on all of that. Maybe $2,000 if we do a backdrop. Anybody that seconds this proposal?
I'll second it.
Okay, and so discussion.
Yeah, is there any tie-in to the El Segundo marching band or concert band as they exit and graduate to keep them involved in the community band?
Well, in the past, so the answer to that is there was, because when Edie Rice and I were working in the high school band, it was an automatic segue. We were searching out people that could come and join the band. And I would say that for many, many years there, probably around 15% of the community band were high school or middle school students. And we have a 20% max. 20% of the community band can be student aged. And I would say a good handful of those stayed when they went to college or came back. Some of them still in the band. We have, since Edie and I left over the last 5 or so years, that has slowly, obviously disappeared. A new way to try to bridge that gap is going to have to be created.
Well, that's why I asked, because at our award ceremony, there's a lot of kids that obviously went away or are going away to school. But a good handful of them are sticking around, whether it be Loyola or UCLA or even El Camino. So, well, maybe it's a certificate that they get on awards night, in addition to all the things that they did in high school, and the culmination of their 3 or 4 years in the band is a certificate, welcoming them to the El Segundo community band.
It also, let me ask you this, Brian. We say that if you're going to college, well, if you're graduating high school and somehow continuing with music, that makes you eligible for the scholarship.
Right.
So we could tell them prior to the announcement of the scholarships that if you're graduating senior and you're going to somehow stay involved with music, that makes you eligible for this scholarship. That includes if you wish to, if you are staying in the area and you'd like to become a member of the El Segundo Concert Band, that makes you eligible for this scholarship. So the proposal on the table still is adding an October concert with a potential expense of from $1,000 to $2,000 above our budget right now.
I had a thought about the concert. Is it possible to have it like on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, like in the quad, when there's light?
Then yes, the only obstacle we have when we do outdoor performances in the quad is, depending on the time of year, is where the sun is located, because we've tried to do shows out there before where around 4 or 5 o'clock, the sun gets at an angle that the musicians, certain ones, have trouble seeing the conductor. The other possibility is we have not done this in years, but is to do something over in Library Park.
Yep. If we use the gazebo, I'm sure the city's going to want to be involved. And in general, somebody gets paid overtime for working weekends.
Very doable.
We got to get people excited about this, we got to make sure it gets publicized. So hey, you can finally come out and hear a live concert again.
Right.
And hopefully some people that maybe we haven't seen come to things like this will come out and listen.
Yep. Well, and that's,
acoustically, the quad at Center Street School would work well. The audience could sit on the steps by the flagpole, and then the band out down in the opposite side of the quad. And if you had risers behind them,
right,
you would throw the sound forward. You wouldn't need mics.
Well, and another option, if we can have somebody that can, Erland would be gone, but if we have somebody that could help us make it possible, is if we thought we were going to put an event together that could draw 400 or 500 people or more, then one of those shells I was talking about, either renting or buying one and starting a series of concerts on Chevron Park. Who is in favor of adding the October concert, assuming that we start rehearsals in August and assuming that we have a location to perform in October? Who's in favor of doing that?
I'm good.
So moving on, one of the other big things on this meeting is storage. So I did some research. I found 3 or 4 different locations, and the best one was Extra Space Storage on El Segundo Boulevard. We can get a 5x10 room, which I think is big enough to store the filing cabinets plus some odd-and-ends and still have enough room that a librarian can be in there and, take a folder and go through some music and do some minimal sorting or something. And based on what the research was when I did it at the time, it was $182 a month to be able to have that. It's all handled online. So whenever she does come back into town is when we would be able to get into the band room. She said there is no problems with a few people coming in and taking the stuff out, that the school's not going to stop that. If we approve this, I would start with our card. We would set up the account the month she's going to come back. Well, so if she comes back in July, we'll wait until like the week before she comes back to officially get it, make sure it's all processed. So when she does come back, then we can have a handful of people help us, spend an hour moving it all over to that location. I'm going to propose that a week or so before we know we can move everything, that we get a room around $182 a month at the Extra Space Storage. Is there a second of that? Todd seconds. Any questions, comments, discussion?
It sounds like a lot of money, but I guess we got to bite the bullet and do it.
Well, with that, why don't I call the question? Everybody in favor of getting this space a week or 2 before Allison returns so we can move this stuff? Say aye. Any opposed? Nobody's opposed. Next thing on the agenda, employees. So I will do one more round of research as to whether or not I will have to be treated as an employee, but I'm 99.9% sure that because of AB5, I will. Every check I get has to be cut with taxes taken out, with benefits, the whole thing. Money, taken out of my check, money going to the government for the corporate tax portion of it, just like any employee that does anything. It's not very expensive for the amount of money we'd be spending to have this payroll company that specifically works with musicians in town do that. And so what I think I will probably do, since this is stuff that would be starting in August, is I think between now and the July meeting, I'll try to get a quote from them as to if this is a ballpark figure that I'm paid across an entire year as the only employee, how much are they going to charge? I wanted to say that
making sure all the money gets paid to the right places on a timely basis, it's a bit of an accounting headache. And,
it is.
You're out of this, Steve, but okay, I would probably, to the rest of the board members, I'd probably say that the board should cover the fees. Whatever fees are additional, we're not deducting it from his pay. We are putting that on the top.
Donor match campaign of the $5,000 that we're trying to raise, which we, through our pledges as a board and the pledges by the community band, we raised a little over $5,000 in pledges. We are hovering around $1,300 to $1,400 raised towards that of money that wasn't a pledge already made. All right, payment alternative that was brought up because of the high school registration day and the difficulty. So Todd, clarify something for me. When they were doing the registration, they were having to go to the SBMA website to be able to access using their credit card. Is that what you did?
So there's 2 ways that we were set up to do it.
Okay.
We had a Google form that people would enter all their information to register their child. And at the end, it said, "Thank you for registering. Click here to make a payment to SBMA."
Mm-hmm.
Or make a donation. And then they would click and it would take them to the PayPal. Actually, it would take them to the payment site on the SBMA website. And there they could select the PayPal link. And everyone was complaining that it was just churning and not going through, and they were having all kinds of issues. Now, I did notice, I walked a couple people through it, and where there's a drop down, I want this flagged for, the El Segundo, concert band or marching band. That was very difficult to, everybody does their stuff on their devices now. So
Right.
If it's not device friendly, it's very challenging. And so that little drop down was very difficult to navigate with their fingers. And so what ended up happening is and I don't know, Brian, if you can tell the origin of the payments, how many actually came through the website versus how many I swiped, but I ended up swiping quite a few.
PayPal just tells me we got the money.
Well, I think that the to me, the biggest point of what you're bringing up, obviously I'd love to be able to streamline things for the high school registration day. But I think the even bigger thing behind that is if parents are getting frustrated during registration day where they're not there because they're trying to support SBMA, they're there because they're signing their kid up for something with a donation to SBMA, that frustration level would be detrimental to our company if that's the way donors end up feeling at a concert when they're trying to donate, where they're wanting it to be as fast as possible, just take my information and go. So a few things I want to throw out there. I did research on Venmo. They are still in beta testing for nonprofit use. Aside from that, I emailed everybody on the 15th about this. I found a thing called DonorView.com. DonorView.com is a full nonprofit CRM. So all the things we've talked about setting up our donor system, Arlene having to create spreadsheets and trackings, and we want to learn who these people are and be able to make notes when we call them or email them and track it and have people have access to all of this so that we can track our donors, track our ticket buyers, send emails out to the different groups. The CRM will handle all of that related to donors, mailing lists, ticketing for events, and all other things related to arts nonprofits. And the price of it goes up as your constituents go up. So if your email list and the people you're managing, you suddenly get tons of donors, well, then the price will bump up when you reach the next tier. It's something we should strongly consider because it will take care of some of the problems we're having as what you're talking about. Nothing would have to go through PayPal anymore. It would all run through this CRM system. If we do an event where we sell tickets, it's collecting all of their data for us and compiling it into the database, the same database where the donors are, the same database we do all of our emailing from. It would all be in one system, which as we grow and need more money for our grants, it's probably that's the kind of system we're going to want. Moving on so we can get through this and go. The committee descriptions. So I don't know if you all saw the email I sent out that finally had all 4 committee descriptions on it. From my perspective, I think they're very good first time write-ups, so to speak, in a formal way of what we're looking for.
And you might want to have a little wording about, the overall, like we sort of control, we set the policy for fundraising. I mean, this kind of gets down into the details, but we kind of set the policy of what's our global goal with fundraising and themes and things like that.
Any comments about the Community Relations Committee write-up?
Just when I've written a lot of things like this and not at work, the magic buzz phrase we like to say is we produce tailored messages. In other words, you're like, this one for that group, this one for that group, this one for that, to get the message across to what they want to listen to what resonates with them. So I don't know if you put the word tailoring in there or tailored, that might improve something. But
all right, very good. Moving on. Board growth. As with all meetings, if anybody ever has any suggestions on people they think might be good potential candidates for being a board member, they can at any point communicate those so that we can work on seeing if that person would like to be on the board. I'm going to go a step further now and recommend we sometime soon really have a talk about what types of people do we need for the specific cause of our company. What are the things, sometimes we say, oh, it'd be nice to have a lawyer. It'd be nice to have an accountant. It'd be nice to have a marketing person. And that's great, but let's get more specific. With the specific things we do, what would benefit this company to have that represented? The key criteria that would make this board fully functioning at the highest level possible, what are the different categories? If we had at least one board member doing blank, 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 that their professionalism they bring to the table, their experience or education they bring to the table takes care of all of these things, what would that look like? And then we use that to figure out who we need to be looking for. That way, it's not just that we're searching for people that we think, oh, well, maybe that person would like to be a board member, or maybe, but we're looking for specific walks of life, people that do specific things or work in specific sectors or bring certain benefits to the company. And so at some point, I think we're going to want to go through. And in some cases, that's not about the board. I think the easier way to look at it is, what walks of life are going to make us a more complete company? And then as we get to know someone who meets one of the criteria, we'll start to figure out, is this person better as a board member, as an advisory committee member, as just a donor, but we want to form a relationship with them as a donor stakeholder? Where are they going to be fitting the best? And then we work with them to put them into that kind of a position. And part of that also is, what are we looking for from our board? Some boards are looking for $10,000 a board member. Some are looking for no money. Some are looking for help us bring in money. And that has to be part of the conversation. We got to be open with people. If a company expects money, obviously that person needs to know up front, we expect this much money from you. I'm not suggesting that that's what we're doing. I'm just saying we need to know in the first conversation when we bring it up, we have to be able to prepare. All of the board needs to be ready that when they say, well, what would my commitment to the board be? We have to be able to know what that answer is.
I think you can also delineate between what is a board level position and maybe, a highly competent volunteer. Mm-hmm. Just because they're fitting that niche, whatever it may be, does not necessarily mean you want them on the board.
Right.
So the first thing that comes to mind for me is, let's say, social media. Okay. It's such a buzzword these days. Everybody wants to have a social media manager or, somebody in PR. But why can't we get a summer intern? It's not paid, but they get to put it on their resume that they were the, social media manager or PR manager for the SBMA Music Association, something like
right.
that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a board level position.
Right.
They don't have to have any interest in what we do and how we do it, other than, hey, I'm gonna make the phones ring. We also did something a little different this year on the registration form. Is obviously all the student information, what size T-shirt, and are you allergic to anything, any foods or anything. But we asked parents or guardians what their occupation was. It was optional. They didn't have to fill it in, but nice to know that, somebody's a truck driver. So, hey, guess what? When we have to get out to that concert or that competition and we need to rent a truck, we can tap on Joe because he knows how to drive, a big rig, that type of thing. It also helps us with, volunteers for, building props and sets and, that type of thing. So we asked people what their occupation was or is, and also, what areas of volunteerism are you interested in? Utilizing something like that is just trying to get a little background on the person.
The one other thing, if you notice in my recommended way of doing recruitment that's different than before, is instead of them just talking to the president and then eventually coming to a meeting, I think it would benefit us to actually have a nominating committee. And I know that's not one of the committees that we had on the thing, but to have at least two people that they talk to before we decide that they should be invited to a board meeting. They go into the actual orientation process, which is not something we've discussed before. And that's the next form I sent out. And that is where a couple questions I wanted to ask you, and I'll have to send these out to everybody else as email. But to make our orientation process better, I think these are the questions we need to ask. How do we improve the process? And I think the questions we should ask to do that are, when you joined, what did you wish you had known that we did not tell you? Everybody else, when you joined the board, my guess is that over at least the first few months, maybe even more than that, things came up that you wish you had known more about before they came up. Or, wow, this is something as a board member I should have already known about. Why am I just finding out about it when it becomes an actual discussion during a board meeting? You know, it could be history, could be financial based, could be industry based, whatever it is. We need to learn where our gaps are in a new member joining the board. How, as a current board member, what could we be doing to support you more so that you feel more fulfilled and like you're actually contributing? Did you feel welcome and valued when you joined?
That what would be very helpful is to have the bylaws plus the lists of everybody connected with the board and what their job is, and emails and phone numbers and things like that. That would be very useful. I was sort of picturing that, and that should be given when a person is like ready to join the board.
I don't know about being more successful, but I think starting out, knowing who the board members are and maybe a little bio about each one, when they joined the board. So you can, you don't have to update this every year, but joined in, 2012. Now, that they've been around for, 9 years. And so that way at their leisure, they can read through it. And then, as opposed to handing somebody a packet, which also seems really daunting. Maybe a password protected area. I don't know if we have on our website or if it's a Google Drive or shared documents, view only, where the board members can access the bios.
Yep.
The monthly statements, whatever it is. And then they can read it at their leisure, as opposed to here's these 200 pages that, or notebook that's being handed to you. Sign here that you've received it, and now they feel like this giant weight on their shoulders that they have to go through this.